We're going to be showing a video. One of our sponsors is the Liberty Law School. They were very generous. If you enjoyed your food, if you enjoyed this venue, please let's give a big hand for the Liberty Law School. They were one of our major donors. Thank you so much. And so we're going to put up their video that they have for us. We got a little 2-minute video, and then I'm going to introduce Peymon, who's from the Liberty Law School, who's going to introduce Joe Banister. So here we go. Go ahead and cue up the video.
Hello to you, my truth and freedom-loving friends. I am Peymon Mottahedeh, the president of Freedom Law School, which I created in 1992. I came to America at age 14 in 1977, and I thought I came to a land of the free and home of the brave. Instead, I found myself in land of the meek and indentured slaves. And I found America becoming a tyranny way back then in 1980s. Folks, we got to take back America, and we can do it one county at a time. Every sheriff, every policeman can stand up for the U.S. Constitution and enforce the federal tax law of the IRS, was trying to go beyond the law, beyond the Constitution, and stealing the money of the local people in your community and sending it illegally to the empire in Washington, D.C. You are the key to have your community be legally and safely income and payroll tax free by going to our website, freedomlawschool.org, and educate yourself. You get the education you never had, should have had, about what's going on with the IRS, and you can now be standing on your oath, truthfully and fully, and the hero of your community, and have your county be a free county, and county by county, we have America become free and prosperous once again. Visit Freedom Law School table and go to our website, freedomlawschool.org.
Thank you very much. If you haven't been out there and talked to Peymon staff out there, really friendly people, really wonderful folks, be sure you get a chance to go out there and say hi and find out what they're all about. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Peymon, who's going to introduce Joe.
Thank you, Bill. It's my honor and pleasure to bring you one of our earliest students of Freedom Law School since 1997, who took his oath to uphold and defend the U.S. Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic, seriously, which led to him leaving the IRS to expose the IRS fraud. Please help me give a warm hand of welcome to Mr. Joseph Banister.
Hey everybody, how's it going? All right, well, I heard about the hook right up there, so I'm gonna make sure I keep this moving along. He's not here. Anyway, so call my talk Decorated Federal Agent to Enemy of the State in 11 years flat, because it took 11 years from me swearing an oath to support and defend the Constitution to being indicted by the federal government for blowing the whistle on the IRS. I was sworn in November 1993 in Oakland, California. I was the chief of the IRS Criminal Investigation Division at the time. And I actually got into trouble because I put CPA after my name on my IRS Special Agent business card. So I thought I'd stick it to him one more time by showing you that. So I come from a family of terrorists. On the far left is Brother John, who I'm actually going to see tonight. He retired from the California Highway Patrol as a lieutenant. Then next is baby brother Jeff. He's about to retire from the San Jose, California Police Department. My mom, Ann, in the middle. My dad would have been in the picture, but he'd passed away just a few months before this picture was taken. Then is my brother Jim. He's a battalion chief of the Daly City Fire Department, California. And then the skinny guy over there on the right is me with my Treasury badge and gun. Uncle Gary, 30 years in the Santa Clara County Sheriff's Office. In case anybody would ever say that, well, Banister was a bozo, he didn't know what he was doing there. In training, I achieved a 95% academic average. I was elected president of both training classes in Glencoe, Georgia. And I also got to choose the class t-shirt. Forty of the 42 trainees in our criminal investigation training class were accountants, so I thought that would be an appropriate shirt for everybody to have to remember the class by. The job itself was pretty darn exciting. Enjoyed it a great deal. Wasn't shaking people down for their, meal receipts and things like that. It's going after money launderers and, huge tax evasion cases. And of course, the funnest part was training every quarter with firearms. So I did pretty well my first few years there. Rose to the highest grade level for those in federal government service, grade 13 for the 5th year anniversary. Started at grade 5. Received the Superior Performance Award and even a Sustained Superior Performance Award and a Top Athlete Award, only just for the Central California District, not for the whole country. Asset Forfeiture Coordinator, Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Force Coordinator, and Firearms and Defensive Tactics Coordinator. So I thought it was a pretty good and rewarding career, at least that's how it started out. And I had my red pill moment in 1996. There's a radio station out there called KSFO. And the host, Jeff Metcalf, had a guest on his show, DV Kid. And DV Kid was claiming that most Americans weren't required to file tax returns, income tax returns, and pay income tax. And, I'm driving around in my government car with my Sig Sauer 9mm, my handcuffs, and my bulletproof vest. And she's saying that the income tax is voluntary, and I'm saying, lady, this tax ain't voluntary. So after hearing her say this, I thought to myself, well, either I'm not a very good investigator, or there's something to what this woman is saying on the radio. And if I had any bias at all, it would have to be that what she was saying was crazy, couldn't possibly be true. But the talk show host, Jeff Metcalf, had already built a lot of credibility with me over the prior 2 years of me listening to him on the radio. He, as he would always say, he wasn't about who is right or wrong, but what is right or wrong. So what I did was I took my IRS training, as a criminal investigator, and actually applied it towards determining who was telling the truth about the income tax system. In DV Kid's booklets, these booklets that I ordered after hearing her on the radio, and this is 1996, when you'd actually still send away for a booklet and put a stamp on the envelope and then wait for the prize to come in the mail. And so in her booklets, she referred to people that had evidence that most Americans weren't required to pay the income tax. And being a criminal investigator, that was one of the things I liked to look at the best was evidence. So eventually I was introduced to a guy named Peymon Mottahedeh. And his name isn't Joe Smith or Jane Roberts. It was kind of unusual at the time, and I thought, okay, I'll talk to this Peymon guy. And of course, Peymon was contacted and says, we've got an IRS criminal investigator who wants to talk to you. but he's not engaged in a sting or anything like that. He just wants to talk to you about whether or not the income tax is a scam or not. So again, I just applied my typical investigative skills that I was trained with and started to dig deeper into whether these claims had any merit. It took me all of 1997 and all of 1998 and a little bit of 1999 to come to at least a preliminary conclusion that this claim that most Americans weren't required to pay the federal income tax was actually true. And when I say preliminarily, it's because my entire professional life revolved around the income tax. If I had any bias at all, it was that this stuff couldn't possibly be true, but the evidence convinced me otherwise. And the evidence consisted of Supreme Court cases, the Internal Revenue Code itself, which, contrary to popular belief, even though I was a CPA at the time and the IRS trusted me to carry a gun and a badge around and I had all this training, they never really dug very deeply into the Internal Revenue Code or the Code of Federal Regulations or Supreme Court cases. Most of the training, I'd say, was relating to the Fourth and Fifth Amendment, which is good, Law enforcement people should be very well versed in that. But as far as the income tax itself, very little deep training. Anyway, after this 2-year period, and the reason it took me so long is that, husband, father of 2, and soccer coach, and a 50-hour work week, and it took me a while to keep digging on that, but also, keep winning the bread for the family and keep everything, burning bright. What I did was I put together a report that was basically some of the highlights of some of the evidence that I had encountered during this 2-year period. And I basically distilled it down into 3 allegations that due to constitutional limitations, most Americans aren't required to file income tax returns and pay income tax. 16th Amendment was never legally ratified, and the U.S. government finances its operations from the creation of fiat money, not with revenue from income taxes. This was a big revelation for me back in February of 1999. I know you guys have all known it for a lot longer than me, probably. So I don't know, how do you think that might have gone over if I'm presenting this information to my supervisors at the IRS? Didn't go over too well. A lot of this stuff is on my website, agentfortruth.com, so if I get the hook, at least you can go there and follow up for more information. But in this letter that accompanied my report of the evidence that I had encountered, just some of the evidence, I said, if the IRS can't address my concerns, that I'll be forced to resign because I cannot serve 2 masters. Well, the response I got back was that they would not be responding to any of my questions or concerns. And this is from other special agents who were higher up the chain than me, but they all took the same oath to support and defend the Constitution. They were all subject to the same Treasury regulations requiring us to report any kind of fraud, waste, or abuse. I realized it was a bitter pill for me to be offering to them, but nevertheless, they had a duty, just like I did. But they said that they would not answer any of my questions, and they'd be, basically happy to provide me with the paperwork to tender my resignation. So what did I receive? 0 explanation, 0 dialogue, 0 concern, 0 adherence to the oath that we all took. So I was sent home for a week of administrative leave. My firearm was taken from me, my credentials. I was left with a pager. Anybody remember what a pager is? A pager of, don't call us, we'll call you, and basically go home for a week and tell us what you're going to do. So they didn't fire me, they just sent me home. And so I decided that because I had earned a fairly good reputation at the IRS, that I'd be better believed if I kept that reputation rather than let the IRS ruin it for me. And you know how the government has a tendency to want to do that to people who want to speak up? So I got that memo, and I decided that maybe the best thing to do would be to resign so that I could also speak freely, because you have a very restricted opportunities to speak express yourself when you are, employed by the federal government. So on February 25th, 1999, which was actually my birthday, I wrote a letter to Commissioner Rosati at the time and explained how, I was very surprised that no one at the IRS saw fit to address any of my concerns. And, to summarize, based on the obvious futility of continuing to work for an agency whose standards and practices so different from what it professes, and so contrary to my own, I'm officially resigning from my position of special agent, effective as of that date, February 25th. So, have very little time, but just a couple little tidbits. The 16th Amendment was indeed fraudulently ratified, but the courts won't hear it. They even, the DOJ actually accused Bill Benson, who accumulated the proof that the 16th Amendment wasn't ratified. The government, the DOJ, said that Bill was lying about that conclusion. So they took Bill to court. And then when Bill wanted to produce his evidence that the 16th Amendment was fraudulently ratified, the government motioned the judge to not let that evidence into the court. So how do you like being accused of being a liar, and then when you have proof that you weren't lying, they won't let you provide them with the proof? But, so let's just say, okay, fine, we won't talk about that the 16th Amendment was fraudulently ratified. The thing is that according to the Supreme Court, the 16th Amendment did not expand federal taxing power anyway. So it really doesn't matter that they ramrodded the 16th Amendment through, the income tax amendment. What matters is what the Supreme Court had to say about it. And so, for example, in the Brooksville case, they said, in very clear terms, the provision of the 16th Amendment conferred no new power of taxation. In another case, Peck & Co. versus Lowe, the 16th Amendment does not extend the taxing power to new or accepted subjects. In Eisner versus McComber, as repeatedly held, the 16th Amendment did not extend the taxing power to new subjects. And then also, you probably heard the term income, like an income tax, and everybody says, well, did you have income this year? And, there's actually a constitutional definition for what income actually is. And I'd encourage you to learn more about, what the term means constitutionally. And income is actually the gains derived from capital, from labor, or from both combined. A gain or profit, something of exchangeable value, proceeding from the property, severed from the capital, being derived, that is received or drawn by the recipient for his separate use. You can think about it like an apple tree. You can pick an apple off the tree and the tree doesn't die, right? The tree isn't really harmed. Its job is to produce apples, and you can pull or they fall from the tree, and the tree remains untainted, unaffected. Well, income is like those apples that can be pulled or fall from the tree. Also, the average American has never been made liable to pay the income tax. And if that's a new concept to you, every other federal tax in all the federal codes point out someone that's actually liable or responsible to pay the tax. But with the income tax, the only person that's made responsible is somebody called a withholding agent, and they're supposed to withhold tax money from non-resident aliens and foreign corporations. And then as far as liability, it's actually the IRS that explains what I just said, so I'll let them do it for me. In the Disclosure Privacy Act notice that's in every 1040 instruction booklet, you can read it for yourself. And I probably don't have time to go through it, but download a 1040 instruction booklet and you'll see that it actually says that you must file a tax return with us for any tax you are liable for. So after I resigned in 1999, there was a little bit of mainstream media attention to my situation, my story. You can see the various mainstream organs that were there. I was even on with Maria Bartiromo and Ron Paul back in 2001. And we also had full-page ads in the USA Today with 2 other IRS agents and myself. That didn't go over too well with the deep state, for sure. We also tried to get a hearing in Congress to address, is this true? Do most Americans, are they not required to pay this? Is the IRS just using fear and intimidation and propaganda rather than an actual law to make people, file tax returns and pay income tax? And so we came very close to having a hearing in July of 2001, and Peymon was actually very instrumental in helping out with that effort. And you remember what happened in September of 2001? So that hearing was scuttled. So during this, call it a honeymoon period, after I resigned, but before they hit me with some real fun, I was actually indicted in November of 2004 on 4 felony counts. The IRS and the DOJ claimed that I conspired to defraud the United States of America and that I prepared 3 false federal income tax returns for a client. And the government media machine kicked into high gear and basically convicted me in the media before my trial. Again, most of the stuff is on my website. Everybody remember this guy? He was actually the tip top of the DOJ tax division who would have been there to approve of my indictment. So I'm sure that and many other things were good feathers in his cap to then go over and be part of that whole Russia collusion BS story that affected Trump and the Trump administration. So again, conspiracy to defraud the U.S. and preparing 3 false federal income tax returns. And the problem is that they trained me too well in the IRS. So my defense attorney, Jeffrey Dickstein, who's a little shorter than those boxes, said, send me all of your research. And so when Jeff made a motion to the judge for more time to prepare for trial, he took a picture of those boxes and attached it to the motion. And there really wasn't need for much more explanation. During the trial, or actually before the trial even began, the DOJ tried to disqualify one of my 2 defense attorneys before my trial even began. And a 28-year veteran IRS agent who was testifying for the government couldn't point out anything false in those 3 tax returns that they claim were false that I prepared. And when questioned about whether there was a conspiracy that I was involved in, the prosecution couldn't bring forth a single witness or any evidence that I had engaged in any conspiracy. I don't think I'm going to have time to talk about this, but it's on my website. Basically, a DOJ trial attorney that I work with agreed that I should be able to meet with some DOJ officials to actually get to the bottom of whether or not these claims about the income tax are true. And what's kind of funny, but he said that I should be given an audience with the DOJ because my associates are mostly notorious illegal tax protesters who would most assuredly be disruptive and uncooperative. But anyway, this trial attorney, he did try, and you know that in his email was never even responded to by any of his colleagues or his supervisors in the DOJ. So the jury, as you might imagine, wasn't buying it. One of the 2 prosecutors didn't even show up for the verdict. And so I was found not guilty, deservedly, of all 4 counts. So, the IRS engaged in a 4-year criminal investigation. They alleged fraud and conspiracy. They convened a grand jury. They had 2 experienced DOJ prosecutors, and yet they take me to trial, and they couldn't provide any evidence of fraud, no evidence of impeding, impairing, obstructing, and no evidence of conspiracy. Yet they still put me through all that. They actually put everybody through that because they're just trying to discredit, to silence the truth. But there was one consolation for enduring all these trials and tribulations, and that was the mainstream media. Because they were very accurate and truthful about the way they portrayed my acquittal. You can always depend on the mainstream media to really tell it truthfully. That was the Sacramento Bee, or as D.V. Kidd calls it, the Sacramento Bolshevik. Then just for fun, I think I might just have time for this, but remember I said I resigned on February 25th, 1999? Well, I was born on February 25th, 1963, and the 16th Amendment that was fraudulently ratified was fraudulently proclaimed to be ratified on February 25th, 1913. So I'm not worthy enough to be an answer to somebody's prayer, but I have a feeling maybe some people were praying like, Lord, will you just send us somebody who will find the truth and speak up about it? And so he waited 50 years and sent me. I can hear you. I mean, he's asking about whether the IRS is the collection agency for the Federal Reserve. I would say that effectively it is. But then the question about being a corporation and all that, that's like way outside the scope, especially with only 5 minutes left. So I'm sorry. So I like to encourage people to try the spiritual toolbox, as you've heard many times this weekend. Pray frequently, asking for God to heal and bless our country. Obey the commandments. Don't take the Lord's name in vain. Be a good example to your fellow Americans, and look into these facts about the income tax system. Peymon Mottahedeh and the Freedom Law School have a table outside, and I think Peymon's going to come up here in just a second. I did write, that report that I originally wrote to the IRS, 20 years later, I supplemented it with all the other fun and games that I endured. And so I brought a few of these, but you can go to agentfortruth.com. Certainly, and get a copy through that, or Amazon, although that would be lowest on my list of avenues to do. Anyway, so that's my website, agentfortruth.com. So I think got it timed pretty closely, and is Peymon coming back up, or? Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Joe. Well, let me ask you as a question. How many constitutional rights do you guys have? Anybody who's not a Freedom Law School student? The answer is 0. You and I have 0 constitutional rights. We all have God-given rights that the Declaration of Independence mentions, and the Constitution and the government is there to protect and secure those God-given rights. So no more talk of civil rights or constitutional rights. So with that, I don't have much time, unfortunately. I don't want to take from other people, other speakers. I'm going to give you a few words of wisdom, hopefully, that you'll follow up with. And that is that in the U.S. Constitution, the Founding Fathers made sure you'll never, ever become a slave of the federal government. Direct taxes are still to this date required to be divided up among the states who they collected, give it to the federal government with a 10% commission. It was done that way in late 1700s, early 1800s. So if that's the case, how come most Americans, 2 out of 3 Americans, files and pay income tax? Because they deceived you. Satan uses deception. With deception, now they create fear. And with that fear, now they enslave you, they rob you, and even kill you with a COVID jab, right? So they'll tell you, can you put that slide on a presentation, guys? You guys heard Joe say, it is true that the U.S. Supreme Court said more than once, like this case, Stanton versus Baltic Mining Company, that 16th Amendment gave Congress no new taxing powers, okay? So if that's the case, if the 16th Amendment did not confer no new power of taxation, how did the federal government now directly make you their slaves? That now, as you heard earlier, the sheriff and counties go to the federal government, ask for grants, right? For a police department or sheriff's department, right? They did it by keeping us all ignorant of the law and the Constitution. You all learned a lot about the law and the Constitution today, okay? So there's a little bit more. The federal government was given power to do whatever they want in Washington, D.C., which was meant to be there to protect the new states from England and foreign invaders. That's why they gave them unlimited power in Washington, D.C. and federal lands. And the Supreme Court has said that in federal lands, they can do whatever they want. That's why January 6ers are in there for several years without a speedy trial. And that's why they can tax in D.C. all they want. And that's what they said in this case of Downs versus Bidwell. You see on the screen. That's why in the tax laws, if you actually read the law, definition of the United States, it is not the 50 states. In the Internal Revenue Code, the section 7701 about definitions is all there. United States and state do not include the 50 states. So Joe Banister has not filed and paid income tax for over 25 years. I have not filed and paid any income tax for over 30 years and openly teaching others to do the same. So, if it is true that if you don't file and pay income tax as a slave of the federal government, you'll go to prison, how come Joe Banister and I are not in prison? Immigrant from Iran at age 14, came here in 77, loved America, the land of the free, home of the brave, has become the land of the slave and the meek, indentured slaves and meek. So I've been teaching Americans about the Constitution since 1996 with Freedom Law School. So what we're doing now is very simple. You exercise your right. You can legally stop filing and paying income taxes after you verify everything we say from U.S. government's official legal websites. Not opinion, the law. There's no time for that. You can go to our website, freedomlawschool.org, and if you go to our table, you can pick up these brochures, guide you through the process, and we have also these definitional brochures. You can see it. We have petitions for free on our website. Write your lawmakers quoting the law about income tax fraud. not one congressman ever has written us back that we're wrong. Laws are here listed, quoted, attached, and they never show us we're wrong because we're right. So what we do, we don't pay them, and we take a portion of your funds you give to us if you want to protect you. You don't have to. You can do it on your own. 100% of keep your money. But we want to fund sheriffs, commissioners like you heard who are running for office. So if you join our Restore Freedom plan like the Founding Fathers did, because that's their plan we're copying. That's exactly how they funded George Washington's army. They stopped paying the King of England the taxes they legally owed. We stopped paying taxes we never legally owed in the first place. Now we can fund the sheriffs to protect us, the commissioners, all the stuff you had, we can do that ourselves, and that's going to go all over the country. IRS has attacked me. I've beaten them many times. You heard Joe Banister beat them. We are the biggest targets of the IRS. We're free. So we're here to back you, my friends. And we want to encourage you to remember, the Bible says people suffer for lack of knowledge. And the solution is seek the truth, and the truth shall set you free. Go to freedomlawschool.org, our website, talk to us, and we'll celebrate with you freedom in a free country once again very soon. Thank you for listening.